Welcome to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Greger on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 86, the Nikita Kucherov edition of the DFO Rundown. I'm Jason Greger. Frank Saravalli joining us today from Florida. Frank, you got some sick decor in your hotel room there, man. I really like that headboard you're rocking.
Yeah, if you like the aged hotel room, this is for you.
Oh, that is awesome. So tell us everything that I was reading some of your comments. Board of Governors now. There's they've got some real strong policies that really have nothing to do with on the ice, more so off the ice and human development, I think might be the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I guess that's the best way to frame it is the NHL has, put into place as of this week, and it's a plan that was, enthusiastically approved by the Board of Governors that's going to be put in place to start a 90-minute mandatory training session on a digital platform for all players, coaches, team executives, staff, including ownership as well, to go through to, basically set the standard of here is what is unacceptable behavior. And, all the rest of it will continue to be in place. The NHL's hotline that they have that you can report, poor behavior, whether it's, sexual abuse or assault, racism, harassment, anything that pops up that, people knows crosses that threshold, well, then, it should be reported. So, this program, the NHL is hoping to put in place by the first quarter of 2022 and be fully implemented throughout the league by the end of the season, the end of school year on June 30th. I guess my commentary to that would be one, it's kind of about time. You would think that in, most corporate workplace environments, this type of training and stuff has been mandatory and in place for years and years. But it's an important reminder. And one of the things that Kim Davis had mentioned, the NHL's senior executive vice president, was it's a reminder that the locker room is still the workplace. So I think that's an important reminder for everyone, that everyone's always kind of thought, well, what happens in the room stays in the room. And this is what happens in hockey. Well, that's not acceptable anymore. So that's one part of it. But my own personal thought is 90 minutes of training isn't going to wipe away 90 years worth of poor behavior that's been acceptable in locker rooms for a long time. So we'll see how much it changes. I think, the big thing for the NHL is that this puts it front and center and creates a baseline so that no one can say after the fact, well, I was unaware, or I didn't know. So it holds everyone accountable in that sense.
And my understanding, Frank, they want to set one up for other leagues as well. Is that correct?
After they get theirs, after they get theirs in place, after June 30th, they can begin to then roll out this similar or same training program to the AHL, ECHL, CHL, NCAA, all the different stakeholders throughout the hockey ecosystem is the buzzword here. That's their plan.
Yeah, well, I like it. It makes sense. Now, what about on the ice, Frank? Are you expecting anything to come as far as possible recommendations or changes, or is the main focus on the ice right now going to be about the NHL's participation in the Olympics?
Yeah, so that's going to be the focus today as the second day of meetings kicks off. The other part of day one was formally voting and approving rubber stamping the sale of the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Fenway Sports Group. There was a big COVID update, lots of talk about protocol on day one, lots of numbers shared with the Board of Governors about, where the league stands with regards to COVID protocol. And one of the big things that the league is, I wouldn't say enthused about, but feels a little bit more comfortable with on the COVID front this season, as Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly explained, is the idea that a lot of the transmission that occurred, because the league not only tests, but they also then break down the samples, they know exactly which strain is going through the locker room. And so last year, a lot of the transmission was player to player, either on the bench or in the dressing room. And you could almost sort of map it out based on where players sat. Well, now they're finding that most of the transmission that's occurring with the positive test for players in these quote breakthrough cases has come from community transmission. And that would mean a player at a restaurant, a player at a party, a player at a family gathering that is then bringing it back into the team. That makes it a little bit different. And so the league saying, well, we feel like what we're doing on the protocol level is working and we're in a good spot.
Yeah, and that makes sense because the players are able to socialize a little bit more, just like everybody in society this year compared to last year where they were really kind of locked down. So that makes sense in theory for sure. Do you think, Frank, like I've kind of I'm done with complaining about officiating because I don't think officiating changes until the NHL and the GMs and the owners legitimately want change. Do you think there's an actual appetite for the simplest thing, which is enforcing the actual rule book?
I don't. Honestly, it hasn't really come up in one conversation that I've had here. So I don't even think it's on the radar at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to a few teams. The Minnesota Wild won their eighth game in this eighth in a row last year. They got the most points in the National Hockey League, and like they're a great story. Bill Guerin, I joked about it last week. He's done the impossible. He's made the Minnesota Wild an exciting franchise because for a lot of years they had the reputation of being this, this kind of boring team. The only challenge is next year they got 12 million in dead cap space, and the following two they got 14. Do you get a sense? Do you think that like the Wild are obviously aware of this? Could they maybe even go for it more this year, knowing that the next 3 years they're at a pretty big disadvantage with all that dead cap space?
I think so. I guess my answer to the question is when I look at their team, I'm not seeing any overwhelming holes. And that's really maybe the answer is, maybe you look at the backup goaltender position, perhaps Capo Kakinen, and I would have been surprised heading into the season, given how much interest there was in Capo Kakinen, potentially even on the expansion draft front is, do they need a backup goalie? He was kind of sub 900 for a while. I haven't looked at his stats in the last day or two, but that would maybe be one hole. I'm not really seeing a ton, even some guys that haven't been super productive. Jordan Greenway hasn't gotten the points to pile up in the way that he would have liked. But if you actually watch the game, Jordan Greenway's played fine. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those odd circumstances. I'm not like, could they go for it? I don't know that they're that far off as currently constituted, I guess is the answer.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Then on the other side, you've got one team in your home city, the Philadelphia Flyers. They've lost 6 in a row. They're 0-8-2 in their last 10. Well, they've lost 10 in a row. They're terrible right now. And the Islanders have only won 1 of their last 10. They talked about I said, Frank talked to me in 3 weeks. I didn't think it, like the Islanders are done. So I'm very curious. And they don't have a ton of pending UFAs. You got Cal Clutterbuck, but it's not like they got a lot of guys to trade off.
They actually, all the guys that they had from last year, they basically brought them all back with the exception of Eberle, which kind of makes this spot that they're in a bit tougher.
No, 100%. And then you look at the Flyers. How long do you think it's interim coach for Mike Yeo? How long before they get their new head coach?
I would have to think that the longer this goes on, the more that Chuck Fletcher is forced to make a move that I don't know that he necessarily even wants to do. Like, I believe that Chuck Fletcher trusts Mike Yeo, believes in him, and thinks that he can be, a solid NHL coach. They worked together for parts of 5 seasons in Minnesota. And I don't even know then that the decision was made by Chuck Fletcher to fire Mike Yeo. So I think that he'd like to give him a long runway, but the way that these losses are piling up, I think he might have to go out and hire someone just to try and steady things and right the ship.
Yeah. Now, before we get to Tyler Remchuk, I spoke to 2 players who were pretty much locks to go to the Olympics, and I asked them about the quarantine, and I was kind of surprised. Like, the players really want to go. Like, the Olympics means a lot to them. And, the one guy told me, goes, well, I've been triple vaxxed. He actually had COVID before, didn't have any. So he believes that he's not going to get it and he feels that they're going to be isolated, even though they're at the Olympics pretty heavily. So I listened to him and I'm like, well, I don't see how they don't go. And this is somebody who's a lock to make the team. What's your sense from people you've talked to this week in regards to that 3-week quarantine maybe being a deal breaker, if at all?
Well, first off, we don't even know if it is a deal breaker because we're waiting on the updated Olympic playbook from the IOC. And the big question that the NHLPA has had on behalf of the players and also the NHL itself, they want the answer to, if you have it, there is the 3-week quarantine, but can we send a plane to come in and scoop you up, a medical evacuation, a charter, whatever you want to call it? That's their thought process is that permissible? Can we get you out of the country if we need to? And we don't know the answer to that yet. So that could be a potential game changer. But I'll say this. I think the players are still steadfast in their yearn to go. And when you look at the way that this environment is, I think there's a lot of players that are concerned, but I think there's a big difference between being concerned and actually raising your hand and saying, I don't want to go. So those are two different things, but I want to throw this at you. And this is why the Olympic conversation is important for today's meeting at the Board of Governors, is that 3-week quarantine, if it is ironclad, that might be a deal breaker for owners to step in and unilaterally say, we're backing out. Because think of the worst case scenario. The NHL doesn't want to pause its season already. It's pausing for 3 weeks, sending its players halfway around the world to China. And what happens if there's a mass outbreak in the Olympic Village that brings down, 60 hockey players with positive tests in the last days of the tournament? Then all of a sudden your season's supposed to resume. You've got 60, 80 players, whatever the number is, even if it's just one player that's, these are all star players on their teams. What if it's one player that we're talking about, or worst case scenario, mass outbreak, where these guys are stuck in China for 3 weeks while the season is supposed to be started up and ongoing again, marching towards the trade deadline on March 21st and the stretch run of the season? It's the absolute worst case, most unpalatable scenario for the NHL. And I could see them saying, hold on a second. We were willing to sign up to send you to Beijing, but not under these circumstances.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fascinating to watch to see how it goes down. I think the big risk is, like, the fans are so excited. They want to see the best on best. I think the players want to be there. I think the owners even themselves want to see it, but there is the business side of it at the end. So lots to hammer out. They have to make a decision, though, either way by January 10th, right? So they've got some time, basically a month today, to have some time to figure it out. So it'll be a fascinating month, Frank, to see what goes on, because the Olympics are a pretty big deal, even though it's not essentially like, the NHL doesn't need it, but it definitely will benefit it for sure. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk for another rip-roaring edition of Buy or Sell.
Yes, the people have been asking for it. They want another edition of, well, not Buy or Sell, it's Fill in the Blank, because we switched the order after we missed an episode. Right. Either way, it is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. Ding dong, order it in. I know a good amount of our listeners are Canadian. The Grey Cup is coming up. You don't want to have to go cook food or go out and get food. DoorDash on Grey Cup Sunday. Come on, it's easy. Let's jump into it, though. The first one. I just want a one-word answer for this question. That it's going to be tough, though. Jacob Trouba's 2 hits were blank. Jason?
Clean.
All
right. Frank?
Predatory.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
I didn't say dirty.
Yeah.
But he's clearly hunting.
Hunting for a big hit.
Well, hunting for a big hit that, the goal there should be to separate player from puck. I'm not certain that is actually the goal when you look at those 2 hits.
Interesting. All right.
But to Jason's point,
I just want to say that's way more than one word.
Well, he had the one word.
No, you
then a
asked
follow-up.
for one word. I said predatory, and he asked for another follow-up. But by the rule book, Jay, you're right. Like they're clean. They're clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they should they be allowed, though? Is that really where the game should be heading?
Jason?
Well, I don't know if it's heading there. Like, we don't see those hits very often. It's He's skating to deliver a blow, and unfortunately, both times the guys put their head down. And I'm not blaming the victim. I don't want people to freak out here, but everything happens so quickly. You're going to deliver a body check, and if all of a sudden the guy's there, he kept all his elbows in, there was no chicken wing or anything. It's hard to think what else you can do in that split-second decision.
We had this talk and debate with Mike McKenna the other day on the Daily Faceoff show, and he was like, there should be a little more protection for players, even with their head down, because they have to look down to get the puck. It's an inherent part of the game. So therefore there should be more protection. I just think, it was interesting to get the player's perspective of it, to hear that part of it.
They can't enforce their current rule book. We're going to add new rules. Trust me, it's not going to change it.
Fair.
My favorite thing when we sent out the clip of Mike talking about it is there were people in the replies going, oh, sounds like a guy who's never played the sport before. And I was like, what are people, do they know who this is? Anyways, our guest coming up is going to be Ducks head coach Dallas Aikens, and his team right now is on pace for 102.5 points in the regular season. The Ducks will finish the season with blank points. Frank?
95.
Ooh, Jason?
You know what, man? I give the Ducks a lot of credit. They just keep hanging around. They won in Columbus. They're without Getzlaf, although I think he's coming back soon. But Frank's number, I'm not going to be original. I'm going to say 94. I think he's right around there. The Ducks are competitive.
You pulled the old prices right on Frank there and just went $1 lower. Nice, smart move.
And I won't win.
Closest. Oh, yeah. You just totally screwed yourself. Don't play the prices right, Jason. Third one we got here. The team in the NHL that needs to make a shakeup next, whether that's a trade or a firing or whatever, is blank, Jason.
Ooh. Wow. I can go with the low-hanging fruit and say the Flyers or the Islanders, but that's too easy, so I'll avoid them. I'm going to say the Boston Bruins.
Oh,
they need a second line center. It can help because you know what, they've got their top line going. What are they, 26 in the NHL in 5-on-5 goals right now? That's their defense is good, but that's a tough recipe. So I'll go with the Bruins.
you bastard. I was going to say the Bruins, but for a different reason. No Bruce Cassidy on the trip. Bruins get the win. I don't know. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. I've just wondered, you think back to the friction with Bruce Cassidy and Jake DeBrusk. I think at a certain point, Bruce Cassidy wears on his players. And I really wonder if it'll be time for a change at a certain point.
And what did Jake DeBrusk do last night in Edmonton?
Score a goal.
And he actually almost had a couple more. He had a really, really good game. Last one, it's the PointsBet bonus question. I'm over on PointsBet right now. I'm looking at the odds to win the Rocket Richard Trophy. This is something that McKenna and myself also talked about on the Daily Faceoff show. The odds-on favorite right now is Leon Draisaitl at plus 175. It then goes Ovechkin at plus 300, McDavid at plus 500, and then Matthews at plus 750. My question to you guys, the winner of the Rocket Richard Trophy will be blank. Jason?
So it's who am I winning, not who would I bet? Because if I was for betting right now, obviously the Matthews odds are just the best. Because
the value is on Matthews, but who do you think is going to win?
Sure, but I'll stick with the lazy pick. The guy who's leading right now, the guy who's got the most goals in the NHL combined over the last 4 seasons is Leon Draisaitl. So I will stick with the Deutschland Dangler.
The Deutschland Dangler. I don't know that I've ever heard that before. Maybe really? I don't know. This is my bet slip right here. I did bet on Austin Matthews before the season started to win the Rocket at plus 250. Okay. Plus 750. I am running to the window.
You could probably cash that out for a decent little chunk right now too if you got it at plus 250 and he's all the way down to 750.
I mean,
yeah.
I had said it for a while. When you look at the start of the year, he was quiet. And I was like, even as quiet as he's been for his standards, he was like 1 4-goal night away from being in the top 5 and scoring. He had a hat trick that followed shortly after, and he's right up there again in 4th or 5th. And he's done it at the exact time, to your point, that Ovi and some others have gone a little bit quiet. And you're going, okay, this is Matthews' window to run in here and at least be tied in short order to the point where then it's just a race to the finish and Matthews scores as good as anyone. And you're thinking that maybe Ovi slows down a little bit as the season wears on, especially with the Olympics.
How great for the sport would it be if none of them slowed down and we got three guys that are like chasing 60 and just neck and neck? I think it would be like the baseball home run.
We were kind of heading there actually in the shortened season that ended due to COVID. We had a bunch of guys at like 48, 49, right around there that were
Matthews.
Yeah, and Ovi. It was the three of them. I think they ended up tied or something like that. I forget what the exact numbers are, but it was like they were on track to get to the high 50s, maybe 60 before the season got shut down.
Perfect. That's going to put a wrap on another edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by DoorDash.
And we talked about it in that question. The Anaheim Ducks continue to roll, and we're excited to have their head coach, Dallas Aikens, join us now on the rundown.
Our next guest is in his 5th season as a National Hockey League coach. He played pro hockey for 16 years and has also been behind an AHL bench for 8 seasons. The DFO Rundown is pleased to welcome the head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, Dallas Aikens. Dallas, how are you?
Excellent. You?
Really good. Thanks. And thanks for joining us. I got to start here since it's so timely. Take us through your view of the Trevor Zegras goal, which is kind of saying something in and of itself because he didn't score the goal yet. That's all anyone's talking about and calling it at this point as we all struggle to come up with a name for it.
Yeah, well, I'm just like everybody else, I think. It was one of those, I saw him go down to pick up the puck. I watch not only him, but these guys do it in practice all the time, just when they're skating around the ice. And when I thought he was going to go for that Michigan play, and suddenly he tossed it over. And I think he just read the play. Like he read that the D-man was about to box him out. So he just threw it over. And Sonny, that was 2 games in a row where Sonny had knocked one out of the air and into the net. But those two, they don't seem to surprise us anymore. It's almost expected that Z is going to make at least one highlight play during the game, and Sonny is usually riding shotgun with him.
So you talked about those guys not surprising with their creativity and their talent, but I think if we're being honest, everyone is probably looking at the standings today. You know, almost mid-December, the Anaheim Ducks are right there. You know, in terms of your role and what you've seen, what if we're looking from afar, what's the secret sauce? Obviously there's some confidence now with your young players that have taken another step, but what's been the secret to your team's success this year?
Well, it's been a number of things, and number one, let's be clear, it has very little to do with me, right? My role has been minimal. First for me, I thought our goalie, John Gibson, set a great tone in camp. I know some people kind of looked sideways at his comments, saying that some people in our organization had accepted losing. He called a spade, and that was just great comments from a good leader to really set the tone, for the season. Everything that you see going on here is player driven. From our vets who have not only played very well, but led very well. And our younger players either coming into their own or getting better every day. And the third ingredient is just an incredible staff. You know, Jeff Ward, Newell Brown, and Mike Stellers have just done an amazing job coming in here from 3 different organizations and helping put in a system of play that has been very complimentary to our players.
Dallas, I don't know how much or how close you watch the NBA or not, but Steve Kerr many years ago, he's talked about it as a coach. He had to really change his mindset. Steph Curry was doing things that no one had really done before and were kind of unorthodox, and he allowed it. And, his players say it's great. For you, you've not that your team doesn't work hard, but the creativity factor, have you had to maybe lessen up from the old school thinking a little bit to the new players, and that, they're trying all these things in practice? Have you had to alter how you view the game a little bit as a coach to let them be more than maybe what you were used to growing up?
Yeah, I think my generation of player, I think if something, you see some of these goals that are scored, we would have taken great offense to something like that. But now, like, just seeing what these kids can do with the puck, and how skilled they are. There's still a lot of people out there that don't like it, and I don't understand that thinking. We are a sport, we are competitive, we are here to win, but we are here to entertain too. People work hard for their money. They're going to put their money into some form of entertainment, and that they come to a rink to be entertained. That's part of it too. Now, I don't have much interest in becoming the Harlem Globetrotters, but if we can make skilled plays at the right time, bring people out of their seat, then so be it. Like that play the other night by Z, yeah, most of the time you'd be passing the puck on the tape to the slot. He just got the puck to the slot in a different way, and we're going to encourage that at the right times.
So as a coach, and Frank talked about it, fifth year in the NHL, but you've been coaching for a long time, Dallas. Players evolve. Very few guys, their first few years in the league are as good as their, in their middle stages of it. How have you evolved as a coach? How is Dallas Aikens different today than you were when you came into the NHL or even in the American League as a head coach?
Well, two things, I think, and I think they kind of go hand in hand, is I listen way more, and I delegate way more. I really trust the players first. That's the one thing we're really trying to do here now, is make this a players first organization. We really believe that Anaheim should be a destination place for free agents, for players wanting to come play here. We've got an unbelievable climate, amazing facilities. And we're a team that we think really is going to be on the rise in the next few years. And so, like, from a coaching point of view, it's the, listening more to everyone around you, but most importantly, listening to the players. I always think that they're the smartest guys in the room.
Dallas, can you give us an example? You mentioned, you're willing to delegate more now, and obviously you trust your staff. What's something today that you delegate that, in your previous run as a head coach, you might have wanted to have your fingerprints all over?
Well, I always thought it was important that you really had a strong opinion on, whether it's systems or the power play or the penalty kill, that the head coach had to run practice. He had to be heard in all the meetings. And, I've really kind of stepped away from that. Especially this year, I've got two assistant coaches who have won Stanley Cups, who have more experience than me. Another coach that's won Calder Cups, and I've coached against him head to head in the American League, who has more experience than me. And even though I am the head coach, I'm very, very interested in what they have to say and with their experience. So a lot of these meetings, take our power play, for instance. Our power plays really struggled for the past 4 years. Like I had been here for the previous 2 years, the power play had really struggled. And I tried to step in and help and do the best I could with it. And I don't think I've said 2 words in a power play meeting. Now, I am abreast of everything that's going on, but I've left that power play to Jeff Ward, who is the man running it, and Newell Brown is riding shotgun with them. And I trust those guys and what they see. They run all the meetings, and a lot of times I'll just step out of the meetings. I think it's important for the head coach not to be around in some instances. So that's kind of an example there.
You mentioned listening. We talked a little just now about strategy. Your title says NHL head coach, but especially with everything that happened this year, with what your team's been through, your general manager suddenly departing, your team didn't miss a beat. How much should, therapist also be added to your title? Because, when you're in conversation and you're listening, that's got to be a big part of what you're doing every day and talking and communicating to players.
Yeah, we've had our share of adversity here over the last few years, but I've always thought that is the responsibility of the head coach. It's, I know no one really talks much about it, but the amount of conversations as a head coach that you have with players one-on-one, you have with parents, you have with agents, you have with staff members. Staff members are going through life as well, and I think it's really important to be a very good listener. I think you have to be very thoughtful with your advice, and I think you have to be highly protective of all your people. And so, as a head coach, there is a lot of managing that's going on. Like you're managing a 23 to 25 man roster. You've got a full staff of athletic therapists, assistant coaches, travel people, and they're all part of your team. And it is the responsibility, at least I think it is, of the head coach to look after not only the players, but everyone.
Dallas, there's always a saying, many people in the NHL, there's winning and there's misery, and there's really nothing else. Obviously, you guys are winning right now. You talked about how you're doing less than you did in the past. Are you a better coach because of it? Do you feel like you're more fresh? Like there's maybe not as much, you haven't taken everything on personally. Does that make you a better coach? Do you feel you're just in a better position now because you're not pulled in so many directions?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. That and I used to really believe in that. There's winning and there's misery, and I don't buy into it at all now. We've really taken the approach here, 2 words: win today, and that has really nothing to do with 2 points. It has everything of like waking up this morning in Pittsburgh. We have practice at 12 o'clock. That's all we're thinking about. It's like, we're going to get better today. We're going to find some way to win this day. So it's up. We're going to eat properly, get our proper rest, have a great practice, hang out together this afternoon, have a good dinner, get our rest again, and then we'll deal with the game tomorrow. And I think we're really fast to really beat ourselves up, beat our players up, have a black cloud follow you around when you're not winning, and all that does is it usually equals more losing. And so we've been able to just kind of pick ourselves up after a game. Hey, last night we didn't play very well, but we're not going to come in here and slam doors and kick garbage cans and make everyone feel miserable. We're going to go, okay, here's 2 areas we need to be better in. Here's 4 areas that we were great in. So we've kind of taken that mindset this year. Our players are all in on it. There's been times this year where we haven't won in a number of days, but you would have never known it. But because if we didn't win, okay, we moved on to the next day. And that whole approach of just winning today, I think it's a good way to live your life as well.
Dallas, the young guys, Troy Terry and Zegras and Drysdale, are getting a lot of talk, as they should. Can you talk about the importance, though, of a healthy Manson and Lindholm, and what a difference that's meant to your team, not just defensively, but overall, having those guys back?
Well, I'll tell you what, the first 2 years that, I've been privileged to be the head coach here, those guys not in the lineup meant we were swimming upstream a lot. And so those guys being healthy, Cam Fowler being healthy, has meant a whole lot to our team. It's always fun when you're in a rebuild because there is such great focus on your young players. Young players bring hope. You're looking towards the future, but everyone forgets our vets here. It's not like our vets are all 38 years old. We've got some guys right in their prime and right in their wheelhouse. And our veteran players, for me, they have driven the bus here. And that starts with our captain. John Gibson is right beside him, pushing this along. But like the Adam Henriques, the Rakels, the Silverbergs, Manson, Fowler, Lindholm, Shattenkirk, like you can go right down the list. These guys have played incredibly well They've really set a high standard. They've got great values. Like these are guys that you wish that they were your son-in-law. So we've got a real great mix of players here, and we're just trying to build here that in the next 2 or 3 years that we are the real deal, and we're in the conversation of winning each and every day.
I think you've been in the conversation of winning this year because you've done it in a lot of different ways this year. Is that something that stands out to you when you watch your team? It's not necessarily the same guy every night that's producing and getting you to win.
Yeah, you go down and look at our scoring. We got a lot of guys in double digits in points, and so that's really important. The other thing that I think people always look at points. It's on any given night late in the game. You're protecting a lead, or the team's got their goalie out. It'll be somebody different that lays down and eats a puck, blocks a shot, makes a big play. And then there's nights like last night. Jeff Ward said it after the second period. He goes, "Hey, if we're going to be a team that's going to be at the top of the standings, it's nights like tonight when we're not playing well, the score is even. We just got to find a way to win the game. Like this is one of those nights." And it was so true. We found a way. Last night it was John Gibson who did his part for his teammates and our organization, held us in there and got us through the shootout, and we were able to score a couple goals. So you're right, Frank. It's different people every night scoring. It's different people making big defensive plays. Some nights it's our goalie, and some nights it's just being good in the shootout.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your vets and the job that Ryan Getzlaf has done this year as your captain. What's been the difference? Why is he way more productive this year than last year?
I think it just started with a different mindset. And we've done a lot of things differently this year, from the way we've trained, the way we practice, the way we've pushed, the way we've rested. I thought it was important this summer to put a lot of that on their plate when we want to travel. And I go back to that, making this organization into a players first organization, a place that people want to come play and be a part of. And I think of, by putting a lot of those things on their plate, really getting their input into it, I think that they felt that they were important, that we were going to look after them first. And with that comes a unity among them, that they're going to work extremely hard for each other. They're not going to go out there and play for the team. They're going to go play for each other. And I think when you see that happening, and I do see it here happening, you end up winning more games than you're going to lose.
So wait, just to ask a quick follow-up, you actually have your vets pick when you fly and pick maybe your practice schedule?
Well, it's really simple. I sat down with Ryan, and then Ryan took it to the captains, our leadership group at the start of the year, and I just handed them a schedule, and I said, when do you want to leave on these trips? Do you want to leave we left 2 days early on this trip. When we're coming up to the month and we've got to give them their mandatory days off, there's 4. That's not even enough. So I just asked them, what days do you guys want off? Like what days do you want off? And we still sprinkle in a couple of extras here and there. They're fully aware of days where they know on the schedule, like, hey, we've got a practice coming up. That's going to be a push day. And it doesn't matter if it's we've lost a bunch in a row or we've won a bunch in a row. That day is circled to get the heads up ahead of time. That's going to be a push day. And it's the same the other way too, Frank. And I think that's where we get ourselves in trouble as coaches, is the opposite way. Maybe you've got that day circled that, hey, we're going to practice, but we call them green days. It's going to be a green day. It's going to be a really light practice. But, oh, no, you've lost 3 in a row. Well, what do coaches usually do? Well, you're going to get your pound of flesh, right? You're going to go in there and kill them. And then you can't figure out why you didn't win your next game. So even though that day has been circled, as a green day and we've lost a couple of games, that day stays green. We need these guys to recover that day so they can be their best in the game. So we want to have an organization, and we want to have a philosophy that we can be one that's inspiring and accountable in the same breath. We can be demanding, but have fun. And a lot of people don't think you can have those words all together, but we really believe that you can do that.
And Dallas, you guys really haven't had a lot of practice. You've played the most games in the NHL thus far. As a lot of coaches talk about, practice is the time where you can work on little things. Has your team and your approach to the mental side been better this year, do you feel, as a team, just because you maybe haven't had the amount of physical reps that you would compared to teams that have played, 3-4 fewer games so far?
Yeah, that's the big thing that everyone's always concerned about, getting physical rest. And the one thing that's really come up to me over the last couple of years is, especially with our travel schedule, it is a challenging one, is the mental rest. And so there's been a lot of days where, we will practice, but we might only put 7 or 8 guys on the ice, and we'll go out and work on, little things that are big things in the game. Let's say we're going to go out and work on some board work or, something like that. Or we put the whole team on the ice and kind of designate, here's what we need to work on. So we're literally on the ice 12 minutes. And it seems like, you just practiced for 12 minutes. What did you do? Well, we got done what we needed to get done. So it's a real fine line when you're playing this much. I do believe in practice. I think if you practice the right way, you get great habits in practice, you get great confidence in practice. If you're a really good practice player and a good practice team, then the games kind of look after themselves. But with that comes a certain amount of physical rest and mental rest as well.
You mentioned those kind of younger veterans that you have that have been very good for your team. One who's healthy now again is Rickard Rakell. He's got 8 goals in 16 games for you. I know he's missed 12 games due to injury. He's had some battles with health and everything the last few years. How different has he looked for you now that he's healthy again? And what is Rickard Rakell doing again now that maybe he wasn't able to in the last few years?
Yeah, he's in incredible shape. And we have a bike test that we do at the start of the year, and while he was hurt, he got on there, and obviously he's training while he's hurt, and he wanted to do the bike test again, which is kind of rare for a player to jump in there and do it again. But he wanted to see where he was at, and he just crushed it. Like, it was incredible what he did. So he's in incredible shape. The other thing that he's not doing is, man, that poor kid would just beat himself up mentally, like when things weren't going great. And I go back again to, just win the day, win today. And if yesterday was a bad day, there's nothing you can do about it. So, I think he's really taken on that mindset and really enjoying it and really pushing it forward. And for me, he's always the forgotten guy. There's a lot of talk around Z, which is, well earned by Z. There's a lot of talk around Sonny Milano, who's never had a year like he's having now. But the glue of the line, the true leader on the line is Rickard Rakell. And he does a lot of things right. He's a real good mentor to those 2 young men. And he's having an excellent season.
How would Dallas Aikens do on the bike test?
Quite well.
I was going to say you keep yourself in pretty good shape. So where would you stack up?
I was going to try to say something humble there, but when it comes to bike, I can't do that.
Awesome.
I wouldn't do very well with the Michigan play or the alley-oop play. I would do very bad at that.
Let's wrap it up with rapid fire.
Okay, Dallas, we'd like to play rapid fire with everyone. The only rule is you have to answer the question. So here we go. The first one: have you tried the Michigan in practice while your other players skate around?
Absolutely not.
How come?
Because they might see me try it and there'll be a huge laugh, and they'll never stop bugging me because not a chance. I can't even pick up the puck like that off the ice. I don't even know how they do it.
That might be the reason to try it, though, to get a laugh. No?
They laugh enough at me that we're good.
Have you and Zegras had a $100 bet on a face-off in practice?
No, we haven't.
You're gonna have to
I wish
ask
he
him for
would.
us.
I wish he would. I might be able to take him down.
We know you're a huge cycling fan. If you could be in one cycle race, which would it be?
You know what? It'd be the one that I've already done 10 times. I did it 10 times in a row. I missed last year because we had some health problems in our family. Anybody that rides a mountain bike, go do the Leadville 100. It's in Leadville, Colorado. It's the second Saturday in August every year. It will change your life.
So is it 100K of just like mountain terrain? What is it? Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's 100 miles. It's actually 103 miles. And it's an out and back. You start at 10,250 feet of elevation. So the air is thin. There's a ton of climbing. And I think the least amount of time that I've ever done it in is about 10 and a half hours. So there is lots of terrain. There's lots of climbing. There's some bare or white knuckling descents. But that town, that community, that ride, what you go through in a day, I'm not fooling around. It'll change your life.
Of your Ducks players currently right now, who would be the best cyclist?
Geez, that's I would probably put my money on Ricard Raquel. And not only is he strong, but he's strong-willed. And I think those great cyclists, they have to be so mentally tough to spend that much time on a bike. But I think Ricard would be the man I'd be betting on.
Okay. You got a pretty good head of lettuce. What's your go-to hair product?
Whatever's kicking around in that dressing room.
Okay. After a big winter, if you're relaxing, what is Dallas Aikens' beverage of choice, alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
You know what? I just said this on the plane last night. I was telling Mr. Shattenkirk, I drink three things. I drink black coffee, water, and Pinot Noir, and that's it.
Okay, nice. Dallas, in your career, who has been the one opposing coach you felt you've learned from the most on in-game management?
Randy Carlisle. Randy, I was fortunate to play with Randy. I've coached with him in the same organization twice in Toronto and here in Anaheim. I coached against him in the NHL. And for me, he was one of the best bench managers in the game. I've watched him destroy teams in playoff series.
Have you ever used a quote from the Mighty Ducks ever as a coach with the Ducks?
I don't think so. And I should probably go back and watch the movie again because it's been a very, very long time since I've seen it.
And lastly, what should we expect next from Zegras? What's the next thing that's going to wow NHL fans?
Who knows? And I think he was really honest the other day. I saw one of his quotes where he said, I'm not even sure what I'm doing out there sometimes. And I think that is really the truth. I think he's so creative that it's like the music's on, there's a beat, and he's just dancing to it. And I do believe that he doesn't know what his next move is going to be. I look forward to more kids, more players doing what he's doing. I think it's just wonderful for our league.
Well, it's amazing. I've already seen lots of videos online of kids under 10, them and their buddies practicing the Zegras Milano play and going crazy when they scored. So I'm with you. I think it's great for hockey. It led on Sports Center, a little bit more entertainment in the game, and the league's better for it.
Absolutely.
That's it. Thanks for joining us, Dallas. We really appreciate it. Continued success with the Ducks.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Dallas.
Frank, it's really interesting. I knew Dallas, of course, when he came in as the head coach in Edmonton, and I talked to him about it, and he's just learned so much. He's a lot calmer now, I think, is maybe the most accurate word. He's still intense and passionate about it, but he's calmer. He's focusing on what he can, and it's really worked out. And I give him credit, his power play, and he joked about it when I talked to him earlier in the season. He goes, honestly, I've said nothing. I do nothing on the power play. I tried to help it last year and it did not work. And so he stepped away and it's worked. The Ducks power play, it was the league worst last season, like all time worst. And this year their power play has been quite effective. And you look at the Ducks, man, like I was keep waiting for them to fall, Frank, but they're not falling at all.
No, and we've seen enough by this point to say, look, this isn't exactly a small sample size. This team has had adversity and hasn't gone the other direction. I don't see that team falling much in the standings. So for me, what stood out in the conversation was the idea that you can be collaborative, you can listen to your players, but that also doesn't mean you're soft. And I think that was, the point about scheduling practice and, we can't get ourselves into trouble where we've lost a couple games and all of a sudden you it's like the old parenting trick. Like you take back the toys that you gave them and you say, go to your room. Hey, we're practicing today. You thought today was an off day. We're practicing. I can think back to the old, the stories from Mike Keenan practicing on Christmas Eve, just surprising the players. And it's like, that doesn't send the right message. Yeah. It really doesn't. You think you're being tough. You think you're, driving home a point. And instead, really, they're like, this guy's an asshole. Why would we listen to him? Why would we want to buy in to what he's thinking or saying? So to hear that insight, I think to me is what really stands out as someone that has not just, grown and has, gotten more experience at this level, but someone that actually cares about the people that work for him and play for him.
And the other thing, a little bit of a pitch man for the Anaheim Ducks, and they want to be a destination place for a lot of people in the league, including some of their own free agents, which is something we'll have to talk about in the future. But you got guys like, Manson and Raquel, and of course Lindholm. Those guys are all up.
It's a big year.
They'll want to keep them. So we'll see how that goes. Fun episode, Frank. Enjoy Florida. Get the suntan lotion on, and we will talk to you on Monday.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.